Marcus Vale stood on his weathered porch, watching the last rays of sunlight paint his struggling ranch in shades of amber and rust. At 58, his hands bore the calluses of 4 decades working this unforgiving Texas soil, but his heart carried a heavier burden than any physical labor could impose. The coffee in his chipped mug had long since grown cold, yet he continued to sip it mechanically. A ritual that kept the crushing silence at bay. The 2,000 acres stretched before him like a monument to better times. When Elena's laughter had filled the empty spaces between the barn and the main house. Now, 3 years after cancer had stolen his beloved wife, the property felt more like a mausoleum than a home. His prize cattle had dwindled to a mere dozen head, not from lack of care, but from lack of purpose. What was the point of building something when you had no one to leave it to? His son Tyler called occasionally from his big city life, voice thick with barely concealed pity and thinly veiled suggestions about selling the ranch. "Dad, you could move to one of those nice communities," Tyler would say, as if Marcus hadn't spent his entire adult life building something meaningful on this land. The boy meant well, but he'd never understood the connection between a man and his soil. The way the earth became part of your soul after enough seasons of planting and harvesting, Marcus. Drained the bitter coffee and prepared to head inside, too. Another evening of microwaved leftovers and television shows that couldn't fill the Atlanta-shaped hole in his life. That's when the sky began to change. At first, he thought it might be heat lightning, common enough in late summer. But the pulsing purple glow that appeared on the horizon moved with deliberate purpose, growing larger and more intense as it approached his property. The cattle began to bellow. It's not their usual complaints about feed or weather, but sounds of genuine terror that raised every hair on Marcus's neck. He grabbed his shotgun from inside the door, though rock salt seemed inadequate for whatever was causing his livestock to panic. The purple light grew brighter, casting eerie shadows across the familiar landscape and making the scrub brush look like alien vegetation. Marcus crested the small hill behind his barn and stopped dead in his tracks. A massive ship rested in his back pasture, easily 300 feet long and gleaming like polished obsidian in the strange light it emitted. The vessel's design spoke of advanced engineering far beyond human capability, with sweeping curves that suggested both power and grace. Geometric patterns covered its hull, pulsing with that same purple radiance that had first caught his attention. A seam appeared in the ship's side, widening into a ramp that glowed with soft internal illumination. Marcus raised his shotgun, though he felt foolish pointing it at visitors who could cross interstellar space. 11 figures emerged in single file, and his jaw dropped as he realized they were women. Each one more beautiful than seemed physically possible. Their skin held a luminescent purple hue that seemed to shift in the alien light. And their hair flowed in colors that had no earthly names, silver streaked with gold, deep crimson touched with copper highlights, midnight black shot through with blue. They moved with military precision, their bearing suggesting both grace and deadly competence. Flowing robes that managed to look both ceremonial and practical adorned their forms. Cinched with belts holding devices Marcus couldn't begin to identify. The leader stepped forward, tall and regal, with silver-white hair that caught the light, like spun starbeams. She held a device that beeped softly as she approached, and when she spoke, her words came out in perfectly accented English, with an exotic undertone that made Marcus's pulse quicken despite the surreal situation. "Marcus Vale of Earth's designation Texas," she said, her voice carrying natural authority. "I am Commander Zephora of the Vanguard Fleet. You have been selected as our bonded mate. Our genetic scanners have identified you as possessing optimal compatibility markers for our collective needs." Marcus blinked hard, certain he was dreaming or having some kind of breakdown. "Ma'am, I don't know what kind of situation this is, but you're trespassing on private property." Zephyra's expression remained serious as she consulted her device. "Our scans indicate resilience, loyalty, and what our council terms earth wisdom. You are the chosen husband for our widow collective, Marcus Vale. We have traveled far to find you." Marcus lowered his shotgun slightly, his mind reeling from the impossible conversation. "Chosen husband? Lady, I think your scanner thing might be broken. I'm just a broken-down old rancher who can barely keep his cattle fed." A woman with hair, like liquid copper, stepped forward, her expression gentler than the commander's stern demeanor. Perhaps we should explain our circumstances more fully. I'm Naya, former tactical officer of the Third Fleet. May I ask how your mate died? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. Cancer. 3 years ago this December. Something shifted in the group's dynamic as the women exchanged glances that spoke of shared understanding and recognition. The crimson plague took my husband, said a woman with skin that seemed to shimmer between purple and deep blue. I watched it consume him from within, powerless to help. Another woman, her silver tattoos glowing faintly in the alien light, added, mine fell defending the orbital platforms above Kethmore. I held his hand as his ship's life support failed. Marcus found himself studying their faces, seeing his own hollow grief reflected in 11 pairs of alien eyes. These weren't conquerors or explorers. They were survivors, just like him. So you're all widows, he said quietly, understanding beginning to dawn. By Ketharan law, Zephyra explained, warrior widows cannot remain alone. We must form collective bonds with a compatible male within one solar cycle of our loss, or face exile and dishonor. The weight of desperation in her voice was unmistakable, despite her military composure. Marcus gestured toward his house. Why don't you come inside? It's getting cold, and this conversation seems like it might take a while. As they walked toward the farmhouse, he noticed how they moved like a coordinated unit, yet each woman maintained her individual presence. Their robes seemed to adapt to the cooler evening air, and he caught glimpses of advanced technology woven into their clothing. The kitchen hadn't seen 11 people since Elena's funeral, and it showed. Marcus busied himself making coffee, grateful for familiar tasks, while his mind processed the impossible situation. The women arranged themselves around his modest table and counter space, their exotic appearance somehow not clashing with the humble surroundings. What makes me compatible exactly? Marcus asked, pulling down every mug he owned. I'm 58, my back's shot, and I haven't been with a woman since Elena died. Naya leaned forward, her green eyes intense. Our genetic scanners measure more than physical traits. They analyze psychological compatibility, emotional resilience, capacity for loyalty. Your readings were exceptional. A woman with intricate braided hair spoke up. I am Vera, former intelligence officer. The scanners measured your grief patterns, your daily routines, your interaction with dependent life forms. Your loyalty, too. Your deceased mate, your care for your cattle, your persistence in maintaining your territory despite hardship. These traits indicate strong bonding potential. Marcus handed out steaming coffee, watching these warrior women wrap their hands around earthenware like it held precious memories. And if I refuse, you mentioned exile. The kitchen went quiet except for the coffee maker's final gurgle. Exile means death, Zephora said simply. Not execution, abandonment. We would be cast out from all Ketharon's space, forbidden to return, or seek shelter among our people. It's barbaric, Marcus said, genuine anger flaring in his chest. These women had lost everything, just like him, and their own people would abandon them for grieving. It is survival, replied a woman with hair like spun starlight. I am Thyra, former navigation officer. Our species has a low birth rate. Every genetic line is precious. Unmated widows represent wasted potential, according to the council. Marcus poured himself coffee, his hands steadier than his thoughts. What about love? Attraction? Hell, we just met 15 minutes ago. Vera's lips curved in something that might have been a smile. Love is a luxury warriors rarely afford. Loved my first mate deeply when he died. Love became a weakness that nearly destroyed me, but attraction. She studied Marcus with open interest. That is not required, but it is certainly beneficial. Naya nodded agreement. Age means wisdom in our culture. Your species' concept of age-appropriate mating is limited by your short lifespans. We live much longer than humans. How much longer? Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to. No. I've seen 97 solar cycles, Zephora said. Naya has seen 84. Our youngest, the healer Kira, has seen 46. Marcus looked at Kira, who appeared to be in her early 20s by human standards. Her healing abilities evident in the way she unconsciously touched each sister as she moved around the kitchen. So what exactly would this bonding involve?
And Marcus?
Asked, his voice steadier than he felt. Ceremony first, Zephyra explained. Ancient rituals to formalize the union. Then integration, learning to function as a family unit. Finally, if all parties consent, physical bonding to complete the genetic merger. Marcus's face heated at the implications. Physical bonding with all of you? Kira smiled, the first truly warm expression he'd seen from any of them. Catherine bonding allows for individual choice within the collective structure. You might not find all of us appealing, just as some of us might not find you suitable for intimate connection. The bond allows for natural selection within the group. Marcus stared into his coffee, seeing Elena's face in the dark liquid. Could he really consider? This 11 wives seemed impossible to manage when he'd barely figured out marriage with one woman after 20 years together. Marcus surprised himself by agreeing to a trial period. My ship requires significant repairs, Zephyra had explained, perhaps 3 Earth months. During that time, we would remain here, learning your customs and contributing to your household, while you decide. The next morning, Marcus woke to the sound of voices outside his bedroom window. He pulled on jeans and a work shirt, expecting to find the whole thing had been an elaborate dream. Instead, he discovered the alien women had already begun transforming his failing ranch. Vera stood beside his broken tractor, running some kind of scanning device over the engine. The internal combustion system is primitive, but functional. She called to Naya, who was examining his sagging fence line. I can fabricate replacement parts from the ship's recycling systems. The perimeter barriers are inadequate, Naya replied, her tactical training evident as she surveyed his property lines. With proper reinforcement materials, we could create defenses that would discourage both animal and human intrusions. Marcus stepped onto the porch, coffee mug in hand, watching his ramshackle operation being efficiently analyzed by a team of alien warriors. Zephora approached from the direction of the barn, where several of the women were tending to his cattle with obvious expertise. Your livestock shows signs of neglect, she said without preamble, though her tone held no judgment. Not abuse, but the care of one person overwhelmed by circumstance. Bato has experience with agricultural management from her home world. I've been doing my best, Marcus said defensively, then caught himself. These women were trying to help, not criticize. Zephyra's expression softened slightly. We understand the weight of maintaining something alone after loss. On Ketheron, I managed a combat unit of 200 warriors. After they died under my command, I could barely care for myself, let alone my responsibilities. For the first time since their arrival, Marcus saw past the military bearing to the grief underneath. What happened to them? Ambush during a routine patrol. I made a tactical error that cost lives. Zephyr's hands clenched into fists. The guilt nearly destroyed me before the council declared us widows and gave us this mission. Marcus set down his coffee and did something that surprised them both. He placed a weathered hand on her shoulder. Guilt's a heavy burden to carry. Alone. I know something about that. Their eyes met, and Marcus felt something stir that had been dormant since Elena's death. Not just physical attraction, though Zephora was undeniably beautiful, but recognition. Here was someone who understood the crushing weight of survivor's guilt, the way it could poison every moment of peace. Perhaps, Zephora said quietly, we can learn to carry it together. The days that followed established a new rhythm on the ranch. The women integrated seamlessly into the daily operations, their advanced technology making tasks that had overwhelmed Marcus manageable again. Vera's repairs had his equipment running better than when it was new. Naya's defensive improvements meant he no longer worried about cattle thieves or coyotes. Thyra's agricultural expertise transformed his struggling pastures into fertile grazing land. But it was the quieter moments that began to change Marcus's heart. Evenings spent on the porch with Zephora, sharing stories of their lost loves and the dreams they'd abandoned. Naya teaching him hand-to-hand combat techniques, their sparring sessions becoming increasingly intimate as trust developed between them. Kira's gentle healing of his chronic back pain, her touch careful and professional but lingering longer than strictly necessary. 3 weeks into the trial period, Marcus found himself alone with Naya while the others worked on ship repairs. They were mending fence in the north pasture, working in comfortable silence under the afternoon sun. "You're different than I expected," Naya said suddenly, pausing in her work to study him. The genetic scans indicated compatibility, but they could not measure kindness or humor. Marcus straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead. "What did you expect? Someone harder, perhaps. It's more like the warriors we knew. But you have strength without cruelty, leadership without domination." Naya moved closer, her green eyes intense. "On Catharin, such traits are rare among males." Before Marcus could respond, Naya's lips were on his, soft and demanding at the same time. The kiss tasted of alien spices and familiar longing, 3 years of loneliness melting away as he pulled her closer. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Is this wise?" Marcus asked, though he made no move to step away. "Wisdom is overrated," Naya replied, her hand sliding up his chest. "I have been wise for 84 years. It has brought me only sorrow and duty." That evening, under a canopy of unfamiliar stars visible through the alien ship's enhanced viewing ports, Marcus made love for the first time since Elena's death. Naya's passion was fierce and tender, her warrior strength balanced by surprising vulnerability. Afterward, as they lay entwined in his bed, she traced the scars on his hands from decades of ranch work. "These mark you as a provider," she said, softly on Catharin. "Such marks are considered beautiful." "Even on an old man?" Marcus asked, still adjusting to the idea of being desired again. Nama's laugh was like silver bells, especially on an old man. "Age means you have survived, learned, endured. Youth is potential, but age is proven worth." As the trial period progressed, Marcus found connections forming with other members of the collective. Zephyra's stern exterior hid a passionate nature that emerged during their late-night conversations and stolen moments. Kira's healing abilities extended beyond the physical, somehow easing the spiritual wounds that had festered since Elena's death. After 2 months, Marcus made his decision. Standing in his kitchen surrounded by the 11 women who had transformed his dying ranch into a thriving operation, he felt more alive than he had in years. "I accept," he said simply. "If you'll have me, all of you, I'd be honored to be your bonded mate." The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Zephyr's military composure cracked as she smiled, genuine happiness transforming her austere features. Naya whooped with joy and swept him into a fierce embrace. Even the more reserved members of the collective, like the silent engineer Cassia, showed their approval with warm touches and bright eyes. "The ceremony must be perfect," declared Thyra, taking charge of preparations with the efficiency of someone accustomed to managing complex operations. "We will blend Ketharon traditions with Earth's customs, honoring both cultures." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. The women transformed his property into something magical, using their technology to create decorations that seemed to bend light and sound. Traditional Ketharon symbols appeared alongside Texas wildflowers, and the entire ranch glowed with soft bioluminescent displays that appeared as the sun set. On the day of the ceremony, Marcus stood in his best suit, a relic from his wedding, to Alina watching his future wives prepare. Each woman wore flowing robes in different shades of purple and silver, their alien beauty enhanced by ceremonial jewelry that seemed to store and reflect starlight. Vera had insisted on updating his wardrobe, creating a formal jacket that incorporated Ketharan design elements while maintaining Earth sensibilities. "You are becoming part of our culture," she explained, "but you must not lose your own identity in the process." The ceremony itself was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. Ancient Ketharan vows were spoken in harmony with personal promises each woman made to him individually. Zephyra pledged her protection and strategic wisdom. Naya offered her strength and fierce loyalty. Kira promised healing and comfort. Each vow felt like a gift, a piece of themselves freely given. When it came time for Marcus to respond, he spoke. "From the heart, I lost my way when Alina died. You've given me not just new purpose, but new hope. I promise to honor your trust, protect your hearts, and help you build the home you've lost." The physical bonding that followed was handled with surprising delicacy. Ketharon custom allowed for individual choice within the collective marriage, and not all the women chose intimate connection immediately. Some, like the enigmatic engineer Cassia, preferred to develop emotional bonds before physical ones. Others, like the fierce warrior Vex, made it clear that Marcus would need to prove himself worthy of their bodies, as well as their loyalty. But with Zephyra, Naya, and Kira, the connections were immediate and intense. The ranch house had been expanded using alien technology, providing private spaces for each relationship to develop naturally. Marcus discovered that his capacity for love was far greater than he'd imagined, each woman bringing out different aspects of his personality. With Zephyra, he was the strategic partner, matching wits and planning for their collective future. Their lovemaking was a battle of sorts, each trying to please and conquer simultaneously. With Naya, he was the steady anchor for her warrior's passion, providing the emotional stability she'd never had. Kira brought out his gentleness. Their physical connection is much about healing old wounds as creating new pleasures. The night of the bonding ceremony, Marcus lay surrounded by his 3 primary wives. He marveled at the turn his life had. Taken 3 months ago, he'd been a broken-down old rancher waiting to die. Now he was the center of a complex family structure that challenged everything he thought he knew about love and commitment. "Are you overwhelmed?" Zephyra asked, sensing his thoughtful mood. Her head rested on his shoulder. Silver hair spilled across his chest. "Constantly," Marcus admitted. "But it's good overwhelm. It's like having more blessings than you know how to count." Naya stretched lazily on his other side. "Wait until the children come. Then you will truly understand overwhelming children." Marcus had given up that dream when Elena's cancer treatments had failed. Now, at 58, he was contemplating becoming a father to an entirely new generation that would bridge two worlds. The thought should have terrified him, but instead, it filled him with anticipation he hadn't felt in years. Kira pressed closer to his back, her healing warmth surrounding him like a living blanket. "Sleep now, bonded mate. Tomorrow we begin building our real life together." As Marcus drifted off, surrounded by alien warmth and unfamiliar but comforting scents, he whispered a prayer of gratitude to whatever cosmic forces had brought these remarkable women to his dying ranch. Elena would have liked them, he thought. She'd always said he needed someone to keep him on his toes. 1 year later, Marcus stood on his transformed porch, watching the sunrise paint his thriving ranch in shades of gold and promise. The weathered boards had been replaced with materials that seemed to shift color with the light, and the entire structure had been expanded to accommodate his unusual family. His coffee was still black and strong, but now it was served in a mug crafted from Catharan crystal that kept it at the perfect temperature. The 2,000 acres stretched before him like a testament to the power of cooperation and love. His cattle had multiplied and flourished under the women's care, their health monitored by devices that could detect illness before symptoms appeared. The pastures were greener than they'd been in decades, enhanced by alien agricultural techniques that worked with the earth rather than against it. "Good morning, beloved," Zephyra's voice carried from behind him, warm with the contentment that had replaced her military rigidity. She approached with their morning ritual, a datapad containing the day's reports and her arms sliding around his waist from behind. At 4 months pregnant with their first child, she had developed a softness that Marcus found even more beautiful than her warrior bearing. "Morning reports show the north pasture is ready for the new herd," she continued, pressing a kiss to his neck. "Naya's security patrols detected no intrusions, and Thyra's agricultural systems are operating at optimal efficiency." Marcus leaned back against his wife, still marveling at how natural it felt to have multiple relationships that all contributed to a greater whole. "What about Cash's latest project?" he asked, referring to the engineer's current obsession with creating hybrid technology that could benefit both species. "She has successfully created a communication array that will allow us to contact other Ketharon refugee groups," Zephyra reported with pride. 3 more widow collectives have been located. Cassia believes she can guide them to Earth if they desire sanctuary. The possibility of helping other survivors filled Marcus with purpose he'd never imagined. Their success had created a template for integration between species, and several government agencies had begun quietly studying their arrangement. not to interfere, but to learn how such radically different cultures could not just coexist, but thrive together. Nea emerged from the barn, her morning workout complete, sweat glistening on her purple skin in the dawn light. Pregnancy had not slowed the warrior down at all. She was 6 months along and could still outfight most humans twice her size. The new foals are responding well to the hybrid feeding protocols, she called, jogging toward them with easy grace. Thyra believes we can increase birth survival rates by another 15%. Marcus watched his second wife approach, love and desire stirring as strongly as ever. Each woman had brought unique gifts to their family structure, but they had also changed in response to Earth life. Naya's warrior instincts had expanded to include protective nurturing, not just of their growing family, but of all the life on the ranch. Kira appeared in the kitchen window, her healer's intuition drawing her to their morning gathering. At 7 months pregnant, she moved with the serene confidence of someone whose body was performing its most important function. "The children are active today," she said, placing a hand on her swelling belly. "They respond to Marcus's voice." The idea of children had terrified Marcus at first. At 59, he had wondered if he was too old to set in his ways, to be an effective father. But the women had shown him that parenting, like their marriage, would be a collective effort. Each child would have 11 mothers and 1 father, ensuring no one would bear the full burden of responsibility alone. Vera bounded up the porch steps, her technical skills having found new outlets in creating adaptive toys and learning tools for the coming babies. "The communication from Earth's medical authorities came through this morning," she announced breathlessly. "Yes. They want to study our pregnancy development patterns. Not to interfere," she added quickly, seeing Marcus's protective expression, "but to learn how our hybrid genetics might benefit both species." It was Thyra who had pointed out the larger implications of their success. If human-Catheran bonding proved viable, it could be the beginning of true interspecies cooperation on a galactic scale. Their children would be living bridges between worlds, carrying the best traits of both parents. "Speaking of medical authorities," Marcus said, putting his arm around Vera's shoulders, "Dr. Harrison is coming by this afternoon for the routine checkups. I want everyone present. We're a family, and families support each other." The integration with local human society had been surprisingly smooth once people got past their initial shock. Dr. Harrison, the local physician, had become fascinated with Catheran healing techniques and had begun incorporating some of Kira's methods into his practice. The bank had been initially confused about how to handle a polygamous marriage with alien citizens, but Vera's technical expertise had solved their computer system problems so efficiently that they now considered the family valued customers as. The morning progressed. Marcus found himself marveling at the choreographed efficiency of their household. Each woman had found roles that suited her abilities while contributing to the greater whole. Cassia managed their technology and communications. Thyra oversaw all agricultural operations. Vex, the most militant of the group, had established a security consulting business that served several neighboring ranches, even the women who had initially held back from physical intimacy. With Marcus had found their places in the family structure, Cassia, the reserved engineer, had become his intellectual companion. Their conversations ranging from theoretical physics to practical applications of alien technology. Vex treated him as a respected partner rather than a mate, but her loyalty to the collective was absolute. Marcus Kira's voice carried a note of urgency that immediately caught his attention. He found her in the kitchen, one hand on her belly and the other gripping the counter. "I think it may be time." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity that somehow managed to feel both chaotic and perfectly orchestrated. Kira's labor progressed quickly, with her alien physiology making the process different from human birth, but no less intense. Marcus held her hand while Zephora coordinated medical support, and Naya paced the room like a caged panther, her protective instincts in overdrive. When their daughter finally arrived, screaming with healthy lungs and displaying the purple-tinged skin that marked her as truly hybrid, Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. Alina had always wanted children, but the cancer treatments had made it impossible. Now, holding this perfect fusion of two species, he felt her presence so strongly it took his breath away. She is beautiful, whispered Vera, the technical specialist. Rarely given to emotional displays. Perfect genetic integration, optimal health indicators. Marcus looked around the room at his 11 wives, some carrying his children, all carrying his heart in different ways. 3 years ago he had been a broken-down old rancher waiting to die alone. Now he was the center of something unprecedented, a family that spanned species and had the potential to change both worlds. As he settled into the rocking chair Alina had insisted on buying 20 years ago, their newborn daughter sleeping peacefully. In his arms, Marcus smiled at the cosmic joke of it all. He had thought his story was ending when Alina died. Instead, it had been the first chapter of something far grander than he had ever imagined. Outside the window, the alien ship that had brought his wives to him was nearly repaired, but it would not be leaving. This was home now for all of them. They had built something unprecedented on this old Texas ranch, love without limits, family without boundaries, and hope for a future that would belong to the children who carried the stars in their eyes and the earth in their hearts. The never-ending. The story of Marcus Vale and his star wives was just beginning.